do David Bowie, Charles Dickens and the two Ronnies have in common? I'm Jack, this is Spread Book Joy, and I'm going to give you the answers to that in a moment. This is a reading ramble where I talk about all things to do with my channel and my reading, so grab a cup of tea or beverage of your choice and let's get into it. So that kind of cryptic Christmas cracker joke starter that I had at the opening, I'm going to tell you what that is in relation to right now. Over the winter, in between days of being ill, because my partner and I were extremely unfortunate to be sick back and forth over the Christmas holidays, like many people I think, but I've got one now again. So we've been sort of getting better, getting sick, getting better, getting sick. And on the days when we weren't feeling sick, we went out for a few days out, little half days out here and there. And I wanted to put in some footage of one of the places we went to, or a few of the places we went to. I'm going to put in some footage now of a pub called the Oxenham Arms, which is one of the oldest coaching inns in the country. And I'm going to put in some footage. You might be looking at it right now. This coaching inn has been a licensed inn since 1477, and it was built around an 1100s monastery, which is built around a 4,500-year-old Stone Age menhir. So this building and the centre of it, very old human constructions, and the Oxenham family turned it into a licensed premises in 1477. It has been a coaching inn or an inn ever since. Is a hotel and a pub, you can stay there. We went into the Snug, and in the Snug you'll see, hopefully you might have seen it by now on the footage I'm showing, but the two Ronnies stayed there. You know, from the UK, the two Ronnies were comedians here in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett, and David Bowie had lunch there with Iman, which I was really pleased about as a Bowie file, and Charles Dickens stayed there and wrote part of the Pickwick Papers there. So yeah, quite a random selection of people that I was all very happy to find. We went into the Snug, it was a really cold day, and it's in a village called South Tawton on Dartmoor. So Dartmoor is one of the national parks here in the southwest in Devon, and it is stunning, and it is full of amazing tiny little villages and towns, big towns as well. I say big towns, bigger than the villages, and these amazing buildings. We went to a few other places that day, so I'm going to pop footage of the walks and the things that we did at the end of the video if anyone's interested in them, because I take these tiny bits of footage around Devon, and sometimes I take enough to put together an entire vlog, and some days I just have some footage which I think is interesting and like, where am I going to share it? But now I'm doing the reading rambles, so here is where I'm going to share it. So yeah, winter has been tricky because we were not well, but it's also given me a lot of time to rest because I couldn't really do anything. So I've also had some treatment for chronic pain in my elbow, which has meant that enforced basically doing nothing. I couldn't do any housework. I could do bare minimum amounts of work, which is good because I have a quiet work month because I can't type, I can't do things like that because I'm right-handed, and yeah, it was my right elbow that had this sort of couple of injections that really incapacitated me, and it's still not back to normal, and I've been told it can take up to 2 months for the injections to take effect, and for the first few weeks not to do anything with the arm, and then for whilst it's recovering for like the month to 2 months after to do as little as possible. So yeah, my poor partner has been doing all the work, but it's kind of forced me to just sit and read and stuff. So I've had a lovely old month of reading. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about my current reads, things that I'm not necessarily going to do a single book review on because I'm really behind on book reviews. I talk about my channel plans, things I'm taking part in, and some people had asked me for to show the books that I got for Christmas. So it's kind of a mini book haul, just because people were interested and they said they wouldn't mind seeing the books that I got. And there's only a few of them. So I'm going to talk about those, and some of them I have read, so I'll talk about them as well. First up, I got this from lovely Emily at Novell Novels, The Black Ship by Carola Dunn. I'd not heard of this author before, but this looks like a nice cosy mystery set in 1925. The Honourable Daisy Dalrymple and her husband, who is a Scotland Yard detective, and I think they discover a smuggling ring, hence the Black Ship of the title. Then I got two wonderful books from the lovely Dani at Dani's Book World. I'll link all these people in the description box below. They're all such lovely friends of mine. Go and check out their channels. So she sent me this, which I wanted to read for ages, but I can't because I'm trying not to read new series until I've finished up some other series. That's one of my channel plans actually, is to try and carry on with series I've started, finish them if they're ones that are finished, or carry on with them if they're not, or finally admit that I'm not going to carry on with them and stop you know, having them as a series that's ongoing for me. So Jade City is one I'm desperate to read. So I've heard such great things about this series. So she got me that, and she also sent me a copy of this lovely graphic novel, The Sad Ghost Club, which I've had my eye on for some time, and this is just wonderful. And it's about social anxiety. So really the characters who are dressed in sheets and called sad ghosts, really they're just socially anxious people, and so it's about all the sorts of socially anxious thoughts that this person has, and they go to a party, and if you look at in the party, the only other person there wearing a sheet is also socially awkward, anxious, and therefore awkward. It really resonated with me. I can resonate with an awful lot of this. A lot of people say to me, oh, you don't have social anxiety. I am crippled with social anxiety, but I've learned to mask it and hide it quite well the older I've got. When I was younger, oh my goodness, yeah, I couldn't talk to people. I still find it very difficult to make small talk, and sometimes that difficulty comes out in me babbling rather than sitting comfortably in silence or uncomfortably in silence. But yeah, this was really good. I enjoyed it. It was very sweet, and there's a whole series of them, I believe, so I might keep my eye out for some of the others. Then I also got this wonderful copy of Talking on Fairy Stories, which I've wanted for some time. My lovely friend Sally, who has an Instagram, it's wonderful, at Salbo Reads, she sent me this. This is something I've been wanting to read for a while. It's Tolkien's essay, and it's got annotations and commentary. Then Ange, wonderful Ange's book chatter, she sent me And God Created Manchester, which is all about the Manchester music scene and lots of photos and stories about the bands that came out of Manchester, which is hugely influential on the UK music scene for years, especially the decades I'm particularly interested in, the 80s, the 90s, so and the 70s. So yes, this is a wonderful book, and yeah, really good to flick through, see some great photos in here. Then Charlie, lovely Charlie, sent me David Nicholls' You Are Here. I haven't read any David Nicholls since I read One Day. You remember it was all the rage years ago when it came out, that book One Day, and I bought that and read it when it was a new book, when I used to buy new books. But yeah, this is his latest one. It's quite a new release as far as I'm aware, and it's about someone called Marnie who is stuck working alone in her London flat, stuck battling the long afternoons and a life that often feels like it's passing her by. And another person called Michael who is reeling from his wife's departure and becoming increasingly reclusive. So they end up going on the most epic of walks and on the precipice of a new friendship. There we go. So yes, that sounds interesting. And then she also got me, which I'm really chuffed about. Let me just get it off the pile of books here. She bought me this lovely Chris Riddell book. Chris Riddell's one of my favourite illustrators, so he's an author illustrator here, and Goth Girl and the Ghost of a Mouse, which I have never had this copy, a copy of this before, but it's so beautiful. Let me just show you. Look, look at the end papers, and these sprayed edges. So the reason I'm chuffed about that is because I actually have a Goth Girl book, this one, Goth Girl and the Sinister Symphony, and I got this at an event Chris Riddell was doing in half term around the corner from my house, and he signed it, and I met him, and he was absolutely the most delightful, entertaining person. If you ever get a chance to go and see an event with Chris Riddell, he is funny and he is so brilliant, and while he's talking he does sketches while he's talking and he gives them out. So I was really hoping I'd get a sketch, but I didn't get one. But when we lined up to talk to him, he talked to every single person he was signing books for. He had a little chat with them, and I said to him at the time, oh, what would be your most, like, the thing that you really would love to illustrate? And he told me at the time it was Alice in Wonderland, which he has since released, so I think he was working on it at the time. So yeah, this is very special. So I got that, and now I have the book that came before it. So Charlie got me that, thank you. So those are the books I got for Christmas. Oh no, wait, there's one at the bottom, and I left it till last because it segues nicely into what I've been reading lately, and with all of my sitting around and doing not a lot, I got this for Christmas from a lovely Gemma from Gemma Books. This is volume 1 of Saga, which is a comic book series about two soldiers fighting on opposite sides of a war who fall in love and they have a baby, and it's so good. It's funny, it's action-packed, it's heartbreaking, not for the faint-hearted. There's quite a lot of violence and spicy business in here, so if those things don't appeal to you, I would probably give it a miss, but I think it's just brilliant. The story is wonderful. So the story is told, the narrator is this baby who is now grown up, but looking back on her parents, how they got together, their life, and her growing up. And I've read 10 volumes of it now. I got this on Christmas Day because I'd been reading it on Everand, and then I cancelled my Everand subscription and I never finished this volume, and Gemma sent it to me, and I devoured this on Christmas Day, and I since found the next 9 volumes on Libby, and I've read all of them. There's a volume 11 currently out, which isn't on Libby. So at the moment I'm reading what I own, so I have to wait until that goes on to Libby. And a volume 12 is coming out this year. So I'm nearly all caught up on Saga and loving it. So that's one of the things I've been loving that I'm not going to do a review of because it's an ongoing series, though I might do one day, you never know. Other books that I've been reading that I'm not going to put a single book review out of, but I'll talk a bit briefly on here. I discovered something on Libby which I was so pleased about. There's a wonderful book called The Lost Words, which was just behind me on the shelf, so I had to pick it up. So this huge book is one of the most beautiful books that I own, and it's called The Lost Words by Robert McFarlane and Jackie Morris. Jackie Morris did the pictures, Robert McFarlane wrote the words, and it is just stunning. It's poetry, and the poems are all words that children today in the UK are losing, as in they don't use them anymore. So they're words for nature, things like bramble and conker. And so they wrote a series of acrostic poems, or Robert McFarlane did, and Jackie Morris has done the most amazingly stunning illustrations for them. Look at these. So I didn't discover this because I'd already had this. I discovered the audiobook of it on Libby. It's 45 minutes long, and if you like this book, because a lot of people I know like this book, I would suggest getting the book, the audiobook, and sitting with this on your lap and listening to it being performed, because it is performed by a number of different people, perform different poems. And I didn't actually look to see who performed them, but there were loads of different voices. They were wonderful. And the audio has the sounds of the birds. So we've got various birds in here, like the kingfisher and the lark. And so they've got the sound of the lark, the bird song, and the sort of nature sounds. It was a lovely way to spend 45 minutes. I sat with this on my lap listening to that, and just, yeah, it was wonderful. So I highly recommend that. Another book I recently finished and really enjoyed, actually I really enjoyed it, was Lirail by Garth Nix. I'm reading the Old Kingdom series with our lovely Fantasy 4 forum, we call it the Fantasy Forum. There's 4 of us, Gemma, me, Gemma, Deea from Novel Idea, and Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, and we've been reading fantasy books together for a couple of years now, and we got back into reading this series in January because we'd read the first one last year, and yeah, we really enjoyed Lirail. Because it's the second book in a series, there's not a huge amount to say about it because you won't really know. But I've been wanting to read the Old Kingdom series for some time, and Lirail is wonderful because the character in it is so conflicted, and she's just so miserable in her life, and she basically she belongs to this group of women who are supposed to have the sight. They're supposed to be able to see things, they're seers and see the future, and she still hasn't. She's one of the oldest people there. They're supposed to get their sight any age from the age of 10 or something, and she's like 19 and she still hasn't got it. And so but destiny may have something else in store for her. So yeah, it was wonderful, and we really enjoyed reading that together. So at some point when I finish the series, maybe at least the first trilogy, because it was originally a trilogy and then some other books were written, then I might do something on it because it was really good. Here's what I'm thinking of DNFing, and it's Fairy Tale by Stephen King. So this was on my shelf for ages, and it was on my priority reads for the books. I'm doing my Read What You Own challenge, and so I put the books from my TBR that I think I'm most excited to read to the front, and this was one of them. Started brilliantly. I could not stop reading it. It was so good. So there's a boy called Charlie, and he goes to a fairy tale land, but the preamble leading up to him actually going to the land was him discovering, like, becoming friends with this neighbour, and the neighbour has a shed in his garden, and in the shed is a way into this land. Now that's not a huge spoiler because the back of it tells you that he finds a shed, a portal to another world. Okay, so that's not a spoiler. The bit leading up to him going into the fairy tale land, which was about the first 200 pages, loved it. It was classic Stephen King, and what I loved about it was a relationship between a boy and an older friend, like an older protagonist. I love intergenerational friendships, and this one was done so well, and I loved it. I was lapping it up. And then he goes into the fairy tale land, and I kept up with it for a while, and it was really interesting for the first part of it, but I've got towards the last, that's page 350, and I keep thinking I don't want to read any more about this. I don't really care anymore. There's so much going on in this world that is unexplained. It's basically got Wonderlanditis, I call it. I am not a huge fan. I'm a fantasy reader. I love fantasy, but I am not a huge fan of world building where there seems to be no rhyme or reason or structure for the way things are happening and the magic systems and what's going on. And it all feels very much like magical realism, so things happening that you can't really explain, but hey, magic, or hey, strange fantasy world. So I'm really not drawn to picking this up at all, and what I'm thinking of doing is skipping to the end, because I can see at the last couple of chapters, when he gets home, I do want to know what happens when he gets home. But I don't care. I really don't care about what's going on anymore. So sadly, I don't think I can count this as read, even because I'll be skipping about 200 pages. So yeah, I've read 2/3 of it. Very disappointing. It's possible that it would have got better, but I've read a few more chapters and I'm just like, I don't want to pick it up. And at the moment, I'm trying to read joyfully, which means if it's not sparking joy in me, if I am not drawn to picking it up, then it is going to put me into a slump, and I don't want that. So basically, I've been taking part in the Read Good challenge, which is set by Ben Reads Good, and the other book I read in January that I enjoyed was Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. Ben's challenge, I'm going to link his video in the description box and the story graph links. You can go and check out the different prompts. He has a prompt for each month. And this has been really great for my Read What You Own challenge, because it's bringing me some variety, and it's actually just really fun trying to find amongst my books what fits the prompts. So the first prompt was Annuary for January, and that is to read a book by someone called Anne, or variation thereof, Anna. You could have had Anna or whatever. So I have had Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey on my TBR, my physical TBR, for 4 years now maybe, and I've wanted to read Dragon Riders of Pern series since I was younger. I used to see them in the bookshop when I was running the fantasy section when I was like 19 or 20 in Waterstones, and I never picked them up, but I've always had them. Like, my brother used to read them as well, actually. He read all of the Anne McCaffreys, my older brother, and I never ever picked up an Anne McCaffrey, and I'm really glad I did. There were some things with it which were a bit problematic, like there's a love interest in the story who basically keeps shaking the girl in the story, who is the sort of, she's chosen as a dragon rider, and he keeps shaking her every now and again when he's frustrated with her or worried about her or scared about her. He gives her a good shake, and I'm like, yeah. So there was that, and then there was something else where their dragons are together, so therefore they have to be together, and then the first night they spend together, it's basically not described in detail, but afterwards he's thinking back to it and he didn't realise that she was inexperienced, and then the character in his head likens it to a sexual assault. In his head he's like, oh, therefore it couldn't have been anything but that. And yeah, so I didn't care for those parts of it really, but the story in general, really enjoyed. The world building is great. It's actually science fiction, not fantasy, because it's set on another planet. So yeah, I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I would want to read more of the series to find out if the inhabitants of Pern realise that, their history, because the history of Pern, the planet, is that it was populated by ships from Earth, but so long ago that the people in Pern don't know of Earth, don't know anything about it, don't remember anything about it. So yeah, I'd be interested to read more of these books and find out a bit more about this world building. And this is the first book, so you've kind of got to give a series a few books really to know how good it really is. Yeah, really enjoyed that. So carrying on for my TBR in February, is it February? Yeah, because it's February now. So carrying on with the Ben Reads Good challenge in February, it is Flamuary. So we have to read a book with a flame on the cover, and I've got my book that I'm going to read in February, and that is I Shall Wear Midnight by Terry Pratchett. This is the penultimate book that I have to read in the Discworld series before reading the final one, that I've recently decided before I read the final book, I'm going to reread the entire 40 books ahead of it. This isn't chronologically the book before the last one, but the last book is a Tiffany Aching book, and the Tiffany Aching books were one of the ones, was a sequence that I hadn't really read or finished. So they were the books on my TBR for the Discworld over the last 5 to 10 years that I've been reading, the ones that I didn't read while he was alive. So this is the final Tiffany Aching book that I have to read before The Shepherd's Crown, which I believe is also a Tiffany Aching book. And Granny, Weatherwax and Tiffany are stuck in a ring of fire there, so that fits quite nicely. So Flamuary selected. The only other plan I have at the moment is I'm carrying on with a read of A Crack in the Wall by Claudia Piñeiro, and I'm reading that with a lovely group of people. And I'll link the channels in the description box below. They are wonderful and they let me join their reading group. They've been reading the works of Claudia Piñeiro, who's an Argentinian writer, for a few months now. And last month they were reading Elena Knows. And because I had all this time on my hands and I could find a copy like just on Libby, no one had it out, I just got it out and it was only 150 pages. I was like, well, I'll read this book. And whoa, I'm going to do an individual review on it. What a book. It really packs a punch for a tiny book, and the group were so generous with their experiences, and their the discussion was so deep and so meaningful, and it enriched the book like tenfold. So what was an amazingly powerful book became even more so, and everyone in that group, thank you for letting me join and for being so generous of your time and your experiences. And yeah, we're going to be reading A Crack in the Wall. We started reading it. This is the second week that we're reading the second half of it. The other thing I'm planning on doing is next month, Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic is running the bi-monthly Belief and Behaviour Book Club. The BMBBB, Bi-Monthly Belief and Behaviour Book Club, which is his book club that he started running this year to read books that make you think. So belief and behaviour, so it's non-fiction, all of it I believe. The first book they're reading this month was Oliver Sacks' The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which I read when I was in my 20s. I didn't reread it this month, because, well, they're reading it over 2 months, January, February. I remember reading it and it terrifying me when I was in my 20s because of the range of things that can happen to your brain and the things that can go wrong just, yeah, if something happens to you, if you hit your head or whatever. So I remember reading that when I was younger and being terrified. If I read that now, the older I get, the more aware I am of things like that. I just won't sleep at night. So I didn't read that. But the next book is God and Anatomy, which is a discussion of, it's not a religious book, it's a book, I think it's a philosophical discussion of religion using the body of God as a structure, basically. So yeah, it sounds really fascinating. I can get it out at the library, so I'm going to be joining in on that. And then the other thing is I'm running FOMO Book Club with my lovely friend Gemma, and we are reading one of my favourite books, To Kill a Mockingbird. So I've started that. I've only just started it. So good, just so good. It sucks you in straight away. Gemma said to me, oh, I'm just loving the relationship between Scout and Gem, and I do too. And I've just got to the bit, just started it, and they've just met Dill, their neighbour. And if you've never read To Kill a Mockingbird and you think you've missed out, the whole point of the Fear of Missing Out book club is books, they're backlist books that we feel people might have missed out on. Gemma and I both read To Kill a Mockingbird, but both wanted to reread it. So yeah, we're doing that, and we'll be discussing that on my channel at the end of February or beginning of March, depending on when we can find time to do it. But yes, so we're reading that. And the other thing is I'm starting to read The Forgotten Book by Mechtilde Glaser, and I'm reading that as part of the Reading the Globe YA readathon I'm hosting with lovely Katya from Page Turners with Katya, and I will link all the information about all of these things in the description box below. So if you want to check out any of these events that either I'm running or other people are running, please come and join them. They are so fun. The Forgotten Book is a YA German translation, because we're reading translated global YA fiction, YA and middle grade. It's actually middle grade more than YA. This is a YA, but we've mostly picked out middle grade books. And this is the first one. And we're going to be doing a live discussion of this, I think over on Katya's channel. I can't remember which channel we're doing it on, but we're going to be doing a live discussion of this when we finish reading it. And The Forgotten Book is about a girl who finds a book in a library, and when she writes in it, the things she writes in the book come true. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. The other thing I wanted to say briefly was I have got a number of tags. The last few months I've been tagged in. One of them was a wonderful tag that's been going around, created by Aaron Read a Book, or Aaron Read a Book. He tagged me because he does this thing called the booktuber name tag, and he uses channel names to like make up the prompts. And mine, I was so honoured to be included as one of the prompts, and I am going to do that tag because I'm included in it as well, and you know, it's a wonderful tag. I've also had a lovely tag from Pat at Book Chat with Pat, and I've had quite a number of tags. Pat did one on reading. She created one on reading, talking about reading and what it means to you, and I really want to do that one, but I have to sit and think about these things. I just haven't really, well, I've had the time to sit and think about them, but I haven't really been doing a lot of filming because of the colds and the various things. So now that the cold seems to be shifting, today's like the best day I've had this week without my voice being croaky or my nose or running or sneezing or whatever. So now that I'm filming a bit more, I will be trying to do some more tags. But caveat, what I am going to do is, if they are book-based tags, quite a lot of the time I've got to a point in my booktube life where I have talked about some books to death. So, you know, some tag prompts will be, I'll be talking about Terry Pratchett or Jane Austen or whoever till the cows come home, and I don't want to keep putting out similar responses. So if I can't think of different responses to the certain prompts, I might not do those particular prompts. That's kind of how I'm going to handle it. And it may be that I don't have enough prompts from one that comes through to do an entire tag, in which case I've decided I'm going to add some prompts to my reading rambles and just do them as part of a reading ramble. So I think that's a way around it, but I will be doing some of the tags in full at some point. In fact, I've got a pile of books down here for the booktuber name tag. So I've got a pile of books just sitting there waiting for me to go through them. So hopefully that reading ramble wasn't too rambly. If you enjoyed it, if you have any comments about any of the things I talked about, please pop them in the comment box. If you are not sure what to comment, put in a flame for Flamuary that's coming up. And I'm going to leave you with some lovely footage of a few places we visited in Dartmoor with some lovely music if you want to watch it. And if you've never been here before and you like this rambling nonsense, maybe think about subscribing, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Bye.
you.